I'm not everyone else." With those words, Meghan Markle set the tone for an interview that would quickly shift from polite exchange to verbal duel. Sitting opposite her was Diane Sawyer, one of America's most respected journalists, known for her calm authority and steady poise. The stage was set for what viewers expected to be a thoughtful conversation. Instead, they witnessed something closer to a clash of wills. At first, everything appeared civil. Diane greeted her guest warmly. "Meghan, thank you so much for being here." Her tone was gracious, inviting. Meghan returned the smile, but her reply carried an unmistakable edge. "Thank you for having me. It's always enlightening to be on platforms where I can clarify the truth rather than the twisted narratives people like to spin." The audience chuckled, though the undertone was clear. Meghan was here on her own terms, ready to push back against years of criticism and relentless headlines. From calm to confrontational, Diane's opening questions were gentle. How was Meghan? How was life these days? Meghan's answer, however, came with a firmness that felt closer to a lecture than casual conversation. Life, she explained, was busy, demanding, marked by constant scrutiny and heavy expectations placed on her shoulders. Then came the question about Prince Harry. Diane asked softly, almost sympathetically, "How is Harry?" Meghan's smile faded. "Harry is fine," she replied sharply. "But let's be clear. Harry isn't my shield or my story. People always want to make me the side note to him. The truth is, I've had to face hostility in ways he never did." The response drew murmurs from the audience. Meghan noticed, but she didn't flinch. A marriage under the microscope, Diane attempted to lighten the tone, reminding Meghan that many admire the couple's unity. But Meghan's reply was quick, almost dismissive. "A partnership, sure. But let's not pretend people don't constantly try to define me through him. I think it's insulting." This wasn't the first time Meghan had rejected being cast as the supporting character in her own life story. But hearing it in real time, against Diane Sawyer's measured presence, made the tension in the studio impossible to ignore. The motherhood question. Trying another angle, Diane asked about Meghan's children, usually a safe topic. "Many viewers admire the way you speak about motherhood. How has it changed you?" Meghan's eyes narrowed. Her answer was as cutting as it was revealing. "Changed me? That assumes I needed changing. I've always been strong, independent, aware of who I am. Having children doesn't define me. I define myself. But of course, people love to paint me as if motherhood somehow redeemed me, as if I needed redeeming." The room fell silent. Even producers behind the cameras exchanged uneasy glances. The sharpness in Meghan's tone turned even the gentlest of questions into landmines. "I'm not everyone else?" Diane, composed as ever, tried to soften the moment. "Many mothers feel a profound transformation. It's a shared experience." But Meghan interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "Yes, but my experience is different, Diane. And I think we should stop trying to make me relatable to everyone else. I'm not everyone else." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, unyielding, defiant, and unmistakably personal. Context and comparison. Interviews with high-profile royals have always attracted global attention. Princess Diana's famous 1995 BBC interview reshaped public perception of the monarchy, while Prince Harry and Meghan's 2021 sit-down with Oprah Winfrey stirred worldwide debate about race, privilege, and press freedom. Yet what stood out in this exchange with Diane Sawyer was the intensity of Meghan's refusal to play by the usual script. Instead of leaning on empathy or shared human experiences, she positioned herself as someone entirely separate, beyond comparison, unwilling to be confined by the narratives others sought to impose. The bigger picture supporters see in Meghan's defiance, a woman reclaiming her narrative after years of vilification. Critics, however, argue that her tone reinforces the very image of distance and superiority that fuels backlash. Was this courage or combativeness? Transparency or defensiveness? Opportunities? Let's call them what they were: chains. With that cutting remark, Meghan Markle turned what could have been a reflective moment into another confrontation. Diane Sawyer, who had just shifted the conversation toward Meghan's experience with the royal family, remained calm, though the weight of the exchange was impossible to miss. Diane's question had been simple enough. Looking back now, how did Meghan feel about her journey with the monarchy? But Meghan's reply carried steel. Honestly, I feel like any mention of the royal family is a trap. Every time I'm asked about them, it's not curiosity. It's judgment packaged as interest. I don't owe anyone answers about an institution that thrived on tradition at the expense of individuality. The words landed heavily. Diane's polished smile faltered, only briefly, but it was the first visible crack in her composure. The tension rises. What began as an interview was quickly turning into a duel. Meghan leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, her posture signalling defiance rather than dialogue. The camera zoomed in, capturing every flicker of irritation in her eyes. Diane pressed on with quiet steadiness. She reminded Meghan that, while the royal family came with challenges, it also provided global visibility. Titles and recognition, Diane suggested, had offered opportunities. Did Meghan see that balance? Her laughter was sharp, almost mocking. Opportunities? Let's call them what they were. Chains. Expectations to perform, to smile, to play a part in their antiquated play. You might see it as a gift. I see it as exploitation. The audience stirred uneasily. Some exchanged glances, others clapped softly, but the dismissive tone cast a shadow over what could have been thoughtful reflection. Visibility versus exploitation. Diane, unshaken, tried to anchor the discussion. I hear you, she said gently, but others might argue that visibility gave you the chance to amplify your causes. Women's rights, mental health advocacy, racial equality. Didn't being part of the monarchy help you make a difference? Meghan smirked, her voice biting. Difference at what cost? I didn't need a tiara to care about women's rights. I didn't need a palace to speak about mental health. The irony is, people act as though, without the royal family, I wouldn't have had a platform. That's insulting. Her words landed like stone, drawing both quiet support and discomfort from the studio audience. A clash of perspectives. Diane leaned forward, her voice still calm but carrying more firmness now. I don't think anyone would deny your passion or your talents, but visibility is powerful, whether you intended it or not. Being part of the monarchy elevated your voice to a global stage. Meghan's eyes narrowed, her tone cutting through the air. Elevated by whose standards? I was already making a difference before they ever knew my name. People need to stop acting like I should be grateful for being tolerated by an institution that didn't even want me there. The sting of that line was undeniable. For just a second, even Diane, who had faced presidents, dictators, and Hollywood stars at their most combative, seemed to hesitate. Meghan's defensiveness wasn't just strong. It carried an edge that felt personal, almost venomous. A pivot to safer ground. Recognizing the mounting hostility, Diane shifted direction with masterful restraint. Straightening her papers, she steadied her tone. Let's talk about your Netflix series, she said, a subtle attempt to pull the conversation back to safer, more constructive territory. The transition marked a turning point. After a storm of accusations and rebuttals, Diane aimed to recenter the dialogue on Meghan's projects rather than her grievances. But the tension from the exchange lingered, a reminder of how much weight Meghan still attaches to her battle with the monarchy. Context and analysis. This was not the first time Meghan had publicly challenged the narrative of privilege within the royal family. Similar themes had dominated her and Prince Harry's interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021. Yet here, under Diane Sawyer's direct but measured questioning, the edges were sharper, the language less forgiving. For some, Meghan's stance resonates. Why should she express gratitude for a system that, in her view, resisted her presence? For others, her refusal to acknowledge the visibility she gained feels like a missed opportunity to bridge personal struggle with broader advocacy. Humility? I've bowed enough in my life. I won't do it here. That single line captured the essence of what had become less an interview and more a confrontation. What began with polite greetings and carefully measured questions had by this point morphed into a battle of composure versus defiance. Diane Sawyer's steady professionalism against Meghan Markle's unapologetic insistence on control. Setting the terms, the spark came when Diane broached rumours surrounding Meghan's Netflix series, claims of budget demands and requests for greater creative control. Meghan's eyebrows lifted, her lips curling into a practiced smile. Rumours, that's your word, not mine. Let me be clear. When you're creating content that reshapes narratives, you don't ask for permission. You set the terms. If people want my voice, they'll have to understand it comes at a premium. Quality isn't free, Diane. Gasps rippled through the audience. Meghan wasn't defensive. She was declarative, almost daring anyone to question her worth. Diane, unfazed, pushed gently. Some critics, she noted, saw such demands as being difficult. Meghan struck back instantly. Demanding, or refusing to settle for less than what I deserve. Funny how women with standards are called difficult, while men with the same standards are called leaders. Don't you find that interesting, Diane? Her words carried weight, echoing broader conversations about gender double standards. Yet the delivery, sharp, almost lecturing, left the room divided. Privacy, perception, and power, Diane leaned in with a firmer edge. That's a fair point. But do you think some of the backlash is less about gender and more about perception? That people see a contradiction between your calls for privacy and your highly public media projects? The air chilled. Meghan's smile vanished. Her glare was unflinching. Perception is a lazy word. People believe what they're told by tabloids and journalists. She let the word hang. Who thrive on contradictions? Privacy doesn't mean silence, Diane. Privacy means I decide what to share, when, and how. That's power, and yes, I've earned it. The words landed with icy force, carrying a tone that felt less like explanation and more like accusation. Even the control room debated cutting to commercial. But Diane, raising a subtle hand, refused. She wanted the moment to unfold. They're a relic. With the atmosphere strained, Diane shifted the focus back to the monarchy itself. When you think of your time in the royal family, what do you feel? Anger? Sadness? Relief? Meghan leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. I feel nothing. Honestly, they're irrelevant to me now. I don't wake up thinking about a crumbling institution. I've moved on. It's the media that can't let go. The room gasped. Diane pressed. You don't think the royal family remains relevant in any way? Meghan's laugh was sharp, dismissive. Relevant to who? To people clinging to fairy tales and outdated traditions? Maybe, but not to me. They're a relic, Diane, a museum piece, and I refuse to live my life as someone else's exhibit. The arrogance in her tone was suffocating. Even Diane's legendary calm began to show cracks. Her lips tightened, her pen tapped against her notepad. Subtle signs, but telling. The sharpest question yet. Then came Diane's quiet strike. Her voice was soft, but its blade was unmistakable. Meghan, you've built a career on speaking your truth, but doesn't truth also require humility? For the first time, Meghan paused. Her jaw clenched. Then, with a scoff, humility? It's interesting how people demand humility only from those who dare to stand tall. I've bowed enough in my life. I won't do it here. The studio fell silent. The audience leaned in, caught between awe and discomfort. It was no longer a conversation. It was a storm, and everyone could feel it. The bigger picture interviews like these inevitably split opinion. Admirers see Meghan's words as an act of strength, a woman refusing to apologise for ambition, unwilling to let institutions or the press define her worth. Critics, however, hear arrogance, an unwillingness to acknowledge contradictions, and a dismissal of the very structures that gave her global visibility. Diane Sawyer, a veteran who had faced some of the most powerful figures in the world, seemed to know it too. As she inhaled and steadied herself, It was clear. This wasn't about getting answers anymore. It was about weathering the storm. That chapter isn't closed. It's been reduced to ashes. The air in the studio was thick, heavy with unspoken tension. Meghan Markle sat with her arms crossed, leaning back into her chair as though daring the world to challenge her. Opposite her, Diane Sawyer held her notes carefully in her lap, every inch the professional, though even she showed faint signs of strain, the calm veneer of decades in journalism beginning to fracture under pressure. A question of marriage, Diane steered the conversation toward familiar ground. Your husband, Prince Harry, many see him as central to your story. With everything you've both faced, how would you describe your relationship today? Meghan's laugh was short, dismissive. Harry and I don't owe anyone proof of our marriage. Our relationship isn't entertainment to be sliced into sound bites for the public. Frankly, Diane, it's insulting to frame it that way. We're stronger than ever, and unlike others, we don't need strangers' validation. The words cut sharply. Gasps slipped from the audience. Diane didn't react outwardly, but her jaw tightened just enough to be noticed. Trying again, she clarified that the question came from admiration, not intrusion. Meghan's response was swift, like a blade. Curiosity is a form of entitlement. People confuse interest with access. Our private lives aren't currency for public consumption, no matter how badly interviewers want a headline. Protecting her children. Without missing a beat, Diane shifted the subject to Meghan's children. You've often spoken about wanting to shield them from the scrutiny you endured. How do you balance that with your very public life? Meghan's smile didn't reach her eyes. Balance is just a word outsiders use when they don't understand my reality. My children are safe because I make sure of it. I won't let scavengers circle them. And before you ask, no, Diane, I don't owe the public photographs, anecdotes, or details. They are my children, not characters in someone else's script. The sharpness in her tone spread through the studio like static. Diane, still poised, explained she had asked because Meghan herself had spoken about motherhood in the past. Meghan's laugh was clipped, cold. Viewers don't get every piece of me. I'll share on my terms when I choose. And if that's not enough, for them or for you, that's not my problem. Even camera operators exchanged uneasy glances as the tension climbed. Torching reconciliation. Diane, refusing to retreat, tried once more. You've been candid about your time with the monarchy. Do you think reconciliation is possible, or is that chapter behind you? Meghan's eyes narrowed. She leaned forward, her voice sharp with disdain. Reconcile with an institution built on hypocrisy? With rituals frozen in the past? With people who never wanted me there? No, Diane. That chapter isn't closed. It's burned to the ground. The words landed like explosives. Murmurs rippled through the audience. For the first time, Diane looked genuinely caught off guard. But Meghan pressed on, her tone hardening further. People like you still romanticize the monarchy. Castles, crowns, fairy tales. But for me, it was nothing but a gilded cage. And the sooner people stop expecting me to bow in gratitude for being trapped, the better. The studio sat frozen, as if the entire room understood they had just witnessed not only a rejection, but a deliberate demolition of any possibility of reconciliation. Context and analysis. Breaking ties with the monarchy has rarely been gentle, but Meghan's rejection felt absolute. When Edward VIII stepped away, his abdication was framed as sacrifice for love. When Harry and Meghan announced their departure, it was positioned as a search for independence. But here, Meghan described the institution as irredeemable, something not to be mourned, but to be destroyed. To supporters, her stance is a powerful declaration of freedom, refusing to forgive a system she views as hostile and exclusionary. To critics, her language sounds arrogant, a refusal to acknowledge nuance, or the privileges that once amplified her voice. Open question. The polite facade of the interview was long gone. Meghan's words left scorched earth behind them. And so, a question lingers. Is burning bridges to the past an act of liberation, or a refusal to confront the complicated truths of power, privilege, and legacy? Power without grace is just ego. The studio reached a breaking point. Meghan Markle leaned back, arms folded like armour, chin tilted upward with regal defiance. Diane Sawyer across from her was no longer the picture of flawless calm. Her pen tapped against her notes, a small, sharp sound that betrayed the cracks in her legendary composure. The spark, Diane's voice, still controlled but thinner than before, carried a pointed reminder. Meghan, the monarchy may have its flaws, but it also gave you a stage that magnified your voice worldwide. Isn't there some acknowledgement due for that? Meghan's response came fast, biting. Acknowledgement? I owe them nothing. If anything, they owe me for tolerating their nonsense as long as I did. I built my career long before I stepped into that palace. Harry was born into privilege, but I was the one who brought authenticity. Without me, they'd still be clinging to tired traditions, desperate to appear relevant. Gasps broke out from the audience. Diane's expression hardened, though her tone stayed level. That's a bold claim. Meghan's smirk widened. It's not bold, it's truth. And let's be honest, people hate it when a woman like me dares to say it out loud. A confrontation unfolding. The atmosphere grew electric, the air charged with confrontation. Diane leaned forward, her patience fraying. Meghan, I've interviewed presidents, activists, and survivors of war. I've seen strength expressed through humility, resilience, and quiet courage. What I'm witnessing now doesn't look like strength. It looks like arrogance. Do you understand how that may come across? Meghan's eyes narrowed, her reply sharp as a blade. Arrogance is the label people use when they can't handle confidence. I refuse to apologize for knowing my worth. If that's uncomfortable, that's not my burden. The silence afterward was suffocating. In the control room, producers whispered frantically into headsets. She's pushing her! Diane's pushing back! Diane Snapp's Meghan sat back, chin high, a flicker of triumph crossing her face, as if she had won some invisible contest. But Diane wasn't finished. She adjusted her notes, inhaled, and leaned forward. Her voice was low, deliberate, edged with steel. Meghan, I've given you the floor. I've let you tell your story. But, let's be honest, you've dismissed, deflected, and talked down not just to me, but to this audience. This isn't strength. This isn't authenticity. This is arrogance. And frankly, it's unbecoming. The studio froze. The control booth erupted in gasps and nervous chatter. For the first time all morning, Meghan's composure slipped. She blinked, then narrowed her eyes. Excuse me? Diane pressed on, unwavering. You've demanded privacy while chasing the spotlight. You've rejected the monarchy while profiting from its platform. You've insisted on control while belittling anyone who questions you. And through it all, you've shown contempt for this conversation, for me, and for those watching. Enough, the audience whispered in shock. Meghan's lips parted, then snapped shut. Her eyes flared with indignation. You have no right. Diane cut her off, voice sharp as glass. I have every right. I've sat across from leaders and survivors who've displayed more humility in 5 minutes than you've shown in this entire interview. You speak of power, Meghan, but power without grace is nothing more than ego. And that's what you've shown us today. The breaking point. Breathing faster now, Meghan leaned forward, anger trembling in her voice. You don't know me. You don't know what I've endured. But Diane's interruption was swift, final, unyielding. And yet, here you sit, painting yourself as the only victim, dismissing every perspective but your own. The room hung in silence, the weight of Diane's words pressing on everyone present. Meghan's carefully constructed armour looked for the first time unsteady, the bigger picture. What unfolded in that studio wasn't simply an interview. It was a rare collision between unshakable self-belief and unflinching journalistic challenge. Supporters would see Meghan's defiance as proof of strength, a refusal to bend. Critics would view Diane's rebuttal as a much-needed check, calling out ego dressed as empowerment. Either way, the confrontation had crossed a line that could not be undone. Open question. As the cameras rolled on and the tension lingered in the air, viewers were left to decide, when does confidence become arrogance, and who gets to draw that line? Without Harry, without the monarchy, without the very stage you claim to despise, you wouldn't be here. Diane Sawyer's words cut through the air like a thunderclap. The audience gasped, some audibly, as the cameras zoomed in on Meghan Markle's face. Her cheeks flushed red, her lips trembled as if searching for a reply. But for the first time in the entire exchange, no words came. Diane pressed forward, her voice steady, deliberate. You came here today and, instead of grace, we saw condescension. Instead of conversation, we were given lectures. Instead of respect, you offered contempt. And this program cannot continue like that, not with you treating it as a personal stage. The walkout. The silence cracked when Meghan shot up from her chair, yanking her blazer closed with a sharp flick of her hand. This is outrageous. I will not be spoken to like this. Diane's response was calm but searing. Then perhaps you shouldn't come on programs where you expect to be flattered rather than questioned. That isn't journalism, it's theatre. And we don't do theatre here. The studio froze. Meghan's face twisted with fury as she tore the microphone from her collar and hurled it onto the chair. The sound echoed across the room like a gunshot. This interview is finished, she hissed, her voice shaking with rage, and you'll regret treating me this way. Without another glance, she turned on her heel, heels striking the floor like hammers as she stormed off stage. Cameras captured every step until she vanished behind the curtain. After the storm, the studio was left in suffocating silence. Then, Diane, eyes still sharp with fire, turned toward the camera. Her expression softened just enough for her words to land with clarity. To those watching at home, I owe you an apology. This is not how we conduct interviews. We aim for honesty, fairness, and mutual respect. What you just witnessed was none of those things. And for that, I am sorry. The audience, stunned into stillness, finally broke into hesitant applause. Diane closed her notebook, set her pen aside, and leaned back. The storm was over, but its impact had only begun. The aftermath. By evening, clips of Meghan's dramatic exit and Diane's unflinching rebuke were everywhere. Headlines blared, social media replayed the walkout on a loop, and living rooms buzzed with debate. Had Meghan Markle stood her ground, or had she lost control of the very narrative she had worked so hard to command? Open question. And so the question remains. Was this the moment Meghan's defiance crossed the line into self-destruction, or the moment she proved that no one, not even Diane Sawyer, could silence her?